a visual effects art director who has worked on Star Wars films and other sci-fi gems. After the interview, the dudes will shift their attention to our Kenobi exclusive that no one else seemed to care about, but they do, and they'll make sure you understand why. They'll also talk about the Book of Boba Fett premiere date and celebrity fan castings for major Star Wars character roles. The show will wrap with this week's version of the fan segment featuring Question of the Week responses and this week's Top 5 Featured Artist Celebration. Punch it, Chewie!
Hey now, everybody! Welcome back to a brand new episode. We're not welcoming you back. You're just welcome back to the Star Wars Time Show. And if you're on the live stream, you notice we have a special guest. We teased it on our Instagram, but we are joined by Mr. Alex Laurant, who is a visual effects art director. And who has done that role on multiple kick-ass sci-fi films and franchises, including the Star Wars. So Alex is here today to kind of talk about how he got into all this art stuff, right? We call it real ass paint over here because we're kind of dumb. We don't know all the technical terms.
Real ass paint.
But yeah, real ass paint. But that's why we bring in people like Alex, who has worked on Star Wars. I'll give you some of his credits to set him up here. I mean, I'm telling you, some fantastic sci-fi stuff in addition to Star Wars. But in terms of Star Wars, Alex worked on the special edition edits, kind of working with some of the new stuff conceptually that was added to the 3 films. He also had a hand in Attack of the Clones, in particular those really heavy visual effects sequences on Kamino with the clones. But in addition to that, he has worked on The Mummy, Minority Report, Saving Private Ryan, Green Lantern. I mean, like I said, what was it, the Day After Tomorrow? Also, fantastic pop culture films that, you know, Star Wars fans typically also appreciate. So, Alex, thank you for joining the Star Wars Time Show. We always appreciate when someone with your credits comes on to the podcast here. So, thanks again.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, guys.
All right, Alex. So typically the way we do these things is we want to learn a bit about our guests and how Star Wars has kind of impacted their life. I mean, obviously, for you, it's had a larger impact than just a fan like Nick and I. But, you know, before you started working at ILM, was Star Wars something important to you as a fan first versus working with Star Wars?
Oh man, that is a loaded question. I've got more answer than you can handle, I'm sure. No, just the right amount. I've got so much to say about that question. That unlocks like a whole treasure chest of nostalgia that's going to just come kind of gushing out now. So Perfect. Get ready. Yeah, big answer. Yes. I mean, like a religious experience, like a conversion kind of. I was pretty well primed for it though. I'm those that are watching can tell with the gray in my hair. I'm old school, which is just a nicer, hipper way of saying old. So OG, whatever you want to call it, I go back. And so for me, the opening of Star Wars Episode 4, I guess it would be for A New Hope, the original Star Wars opening happened when I was, I think, a junior in high school in the late 70s. So that gives you, if you want to do the napkin math, please don't. Then that'll tell you just how old school I am. But that's the period of my life when that opened up. But a little bit of backstory, I was kind of primed for it in a way that maybe not your average person was, and that I was a sci-fi fanatic, nerd, geek, whatever you want to call it, for years earlier, because I had been I've been lucky enough to be raised by an artist. First of all, I was raised in a house of my mom, a painter. She was a painter who didn't just paint nice little still lifes of things. She did that too, but she painted surrealistic stuff. So, like Salvador Dali and Magritte. You've seen surrealism. You kind of know what that term means.
Well, hey, Alex, real quick, I think you dabble in that too, right? Because we actually have your Instagram page up right now, and I would classify some of that as surreal, right? Yeah, so it rubbed off a bit, huh? You picked up a few skills from your mother.
I won't deny it. Nature versus nurture, whatever you want to debate that. I think there's a heavy argument in my case for both. So she gave me a lot of DNA that came through her father, who was also a painter, not a surrealist. But anyway, I grew up with all this kind of fantastical imagery around me. It was normal. And for whatever reason, I got bitten by the fantasy and science fiction bug at a very early age. I went to see some animation festivals and saw some of the old black and white, stop motion films and Technicolor stop motion animation films. And like many a film effects geek will tell you, Ray Harryhausen, the stop motion animator, considered the grandfather of modern special effects, visual effects as we know them. He was an inspiration to so many. There were other visual effects veterans of that whole earlier era that I would see bits and pieces of. And I slowly started to learn about how these movies were made. And mind you, this was a pretty black box kind of industry then. It's not like today where there is an industry, a visual effect industry that's not only established and provides a very nice career path for many, many people around the world, but it's also got its own fan base and following, not to mention the fact that the tools themselves are now in the hands of everybody. So visual effects are this thing that's been democratized, and everybody can kind of do it now in some fashion, which is fantastic. Everyone's got the paintbrush now. Back then, going back into the time travel, it wasn't that way. It was very hard to find out about what this weird secret industry was. Part of that was what preserved the magic in movie magic, is because really the secrets were well kept. Nobody really knew how stuff was done, which is also different from now, where largely everyone has a sense of how most stuff is done. It's how well it's done and how creatively that becomes the thing. But the how is open to so many people to learn anything they want to learn. Anyway, all of that is kind of the stage setting for why Star Wars, when it opened, was such a major thing for me and the few similar nerd friends that I had. Because we had started making our own movies when we were around 12. That's how nerdy we were. We made our own stop motion animated films, designed our own creatures. We didn't do a lot of the dating and sports stuff.
What was that? Were you guys using
Popular Social?
Alex, were you guys using like Super 8s back then to do this? I mean, was this like J.J. Abrams type of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, it is literally J.J. Abrams. It's literally like we were the kids in Super 8, his movie.
That's awesome.
We were that. We were like, Stranger Things, those kids. In the first part of the first episode. Not all the stuff that happened to them later, but we were that kind of crowd. And we were a tight-knit little group of sci-fi nerds.
Do you still work with any of these friends, Alex? Did any of them kind of get pulled along with you, or they all do other things in life?
They all do other things in life now, although we have stayed in touch, a couple of them for sure. And one of them in particular actually ties into a story, which is a kind of funny one, which was, I grew up in San Francisco. And as most people know, Star Wars visual effects were all done in Los Angeles. And then right after Star Wars became the success that it was, and it was established that the sequels would be made, back in the late, 1978, 79, I guess it would be, as everyone knows, George Lucas decided to move his entire operation to Northern California for a number of reasons. One of which was to sort of get away from the LA Hollywood culture and go to a place where he could define his own kind of creative culture and just be in a different space. And he did that, obviously, and did it very well. So he arrived in Marin County, which is just across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. And so we had this knowledge. I'm jumping ahead now after Star Wars came out. We had this knowledge that they'd moved up to our area. And little by little, we kind of found out that they were across the bay in the North Bay, but nobody knew where. Talk about well-kept secrets. So I had, as I said, a close circle of friends, very few of which were actually as nerdy as me, but one or two of which were. And one in particular was my close buddy, and he and I were filmmaking partners. We would do makeup experiments on each other with I say makeup, I don't mean cosmetics. I mean full-on gore, alien things with latex and foam rubber casting of our faces to do life masks and all of that physical latex stuff. We threw ourselves into it. Anyway, he was my partner in crime. Or, if you'll forgive the dad joke, a partner in slime, because this was a lot of slimy stuff we would use in our craft. And sorry, it just they come out. The dad jokes just come out. He actually kind of chose his own path and ended up kind of taking a unofficial, unparentally sanctioned trip with a bunch of his drawings under his arm down to LA, and he found out where the art department at then Industrial Light and Magic #1 was located, and managed through some connection he'd made to get an interview with Joe Johnston and the art department there. And when he came back and told us these stories, our jaws were all hanging. We just like, you did what? That's amazing. So they interviewed him, and it wasn't the right time, but they said, hey, we're moving up north at some point in the future. We might call you up. And that's where they left it. But he had done something right, because sure enough, they did call him. And he ended up hired in Marin County at the Kerner complex there in the industrial area of San Rafael in the San Francisco area. He ended up working there, getting hired as kind of an everything, just like do anything we need. He will build tables, help build sets, act as an assistant cameraman or a lighting.
Anything to get in, right? Anything to get into the production.
Literally. Anything. And he happily took that opportunity. And he's just out of high school, pretty much. We all are. So we're sort of vicariously living through him. But he can't say anything. He can't say anything. And I'm not going to name his name, but anyone who knows him will know who I'm talking about. And the reason I'm not going to name his name is because he broke a few rules. He bent a few rules, just a few, nothing bad. But he did let us in for some late night tours.
Oh, boy.
And so, that was one of the formative experiences, having already been blown away by Star Wars in the theaters, and I'll come back to that experience. This was kind of a extra get to go inside the temple, be snuck inside the temple, and just see stuff happening behind the scenes. And that was one of the experiences that I think sealed it all.
Yeah, I was going to say, after that, Alex, it was probably impossible for you to focus on any other career path, right? Like once you had that taste, the tease of what your life could be, it was probably like you just were laser focused at that point.
Well, it's funny you should say laser focused, because you'd think that would be the case. And yet, for whatever weird bunch of reasons, I made some choices. And they weren't focused around film. I think maybe one of the things, not to psychoanalyze myself too much, however many decades later, but I think I might have gotten a little daunted, a little scared of how one gets in. And what he experienced was such a fluke. And it wasn't as simple as me just wanting to show my portfolio and ride on his coattails. Honestly, there might have been a little competitive thing where I didn't want to go following him. He did his thing. I'm now going to choose my path. Might have been some of that, but that's kind of what I did. I ended up going a slightly different two-step to the side and found my way in a different way later. And I basically went and focused on my art, on my 2D art. And I ended up going to art school and studying graphic design and fine art and illustration, still staying in the San Francisco area. And I've developed a whole lot of other skills looking back on it. I'm super glad I did. Looking back on it from this vantage point, there's no wrong thing that happened or, gee, I wish this had or shoulda, woulda, coulda. I'm lucky enough not to say that at all, but I do credit that experience and his absolute die hard, go get it. I'm not going to let any script of how I'm supposed to live my life as an 18-year-old tell me how to go get this, because there is no script. First of all, nobody even knows the location of this destination. I'm just going to go find it. And so I'll always say this is tribute to my friend for his initiative and just bravery to go do that. If anything, I took a little more of a traditional route later on by going and studying art and working in some other fields, always knowing somehow I would come back to it, but I wasn't going to come back to it I was going to come back to it through art. And so when I found out about concept art as a thing, storyboard artists and concept paintings and concept illustration, and that whole way of applying art, drawing skills and painting skills and industrial design skills, visual illustration skills to the process of designing for film. When I started to get a picture of that, that's the path I decided I would build towards. So I started
really
filling my
is,
portfolio, that.
We've talked to a few artists at this point in time, right, Nick? And it really is amazing how similar yet different all of their journeys are in making it into the entertainment industry. But there's usually a common thread, and that is, excuse my language here, but just having the balls, if you will, to go against the grain and just kind of, get yourself out there, where Alex's friend just is hunting down Lucasfilm's new offices or ILM. It also sounds like we could be getting to this thing, and we've been stressing it here with some of our guests to our younger fans. A lot of the times it's about who you know. I mean, obviously you got to put the time in and hone your craft. But specifically, it sounds like in entertainment, a lot of times you may run into one or two people that could ultimately change the trajectory of your life. So was that the case for you, Alex? Like after art school, did you make contacts there that helped you then get into ILM, or how did you ultimately end up at ILM?
Well, it's just a great topic you bring up, and I've been talking about it recently in a couple of other conversations, and it's kind of come back to me now and struck me how much it is, just like you say, it's this combination of putting yourself out there and acknowledging especially when you're young, and especially if you're young and confident and you think, I got some talent, I got some skills. That's great. As you say, it's about the work at the end of the day. You have to have the work and the dedication showing in your portfolio so that when you do hopefully get the chance to show it, it does speak it does what it needs to do,
of course,
to be useful to the people who want to hire you. But until you get to that point, how do you make it happen? And that's a really good question. And putting yourself out there and just accepting the fact that bum luck, fates, whatever, serendipity, being at the right place at the right time, whatever you want to chalk that up to, whatever your version of that is, that's a huge part of it too. But they're both interrelated. If you ascribe to this fate thing where there's some intersection's going to happen at some point where you're going to run into somebody or someone's going to notice you, and it might be in the most unexpected kind of circumstance. Well, that is most likely to happen if you've spread yourself out there socially as much as possible and networked as much as possible. And it's very unlikely to happen if you have done none of that or little of that. So there's like a direct proportional relationship. The advice boils down to this: put yourself out there, be proactive as much as you can, even when it doesn't apparently lead to a specific thing, a job or a thing. Just have conversations with people in the industry. I talk frequently about the importance of mentors as well, of finding somebody who you can form some bond with, who's older than you, who's got some worldly wisdom, ideally in the industry or in something related to it. And sometimes that mentor, that coach, that whatever, can become someone who introduces you to someone who knows someone who knows someone. And literally that kind of weird, unpredictable, how many degrees of separation thing, it really happens. And that is how a lot of these opportunities come to be, because somebody who knows somebody needs this. And, I know a guy or I know a gal and she does this really well. Maybe she could use, whatever. That is far more of a reliable piece of advice, even though it's super nebulous, than anything I could say that had more of a set, rigid, number of steps.
Kind of listening to your upbringing, I have to ask, with hindsight, do you feel like today's landscape with all the social media and YouTube and ways to get creatives out in front of larger audiences quicker, do you feel like that would have been a hindrance to you back then, or would you have preferred to have grown up now with your creativity and had these more accessible tool sets?
It's a really good question. You're hitting me with some good ones.
Well, hey man, you're giving us good
question.
stories. I'm kind of dumb. I'm just curious and hearing like you're shooting movies on film, and I'm sure that was hard to edit as a kid, and you're doing all this makeup, and you really had nowhere to share it outside of amongst your own little group. Where these days, young Alex could have 5 million followers on YouTube, depending on the content you're putting out. So I was just curious if you would have preferred to have tried it now, where it's arguably more competitive because of the access to the tools, or if you liked it back then where it was grassroots and who do you know, and hey, I know Skip and Skip knows Jane and she can get us this access. Or
well, I'm going to avoid the single answer because it's a little bit of both, but I'm going to say personally that nostalgic 2020 hindsight, super gauzy, super rosy. I'm going to say that I would prefer a bit more of the olden times, the older days, because of what you said. What I did and what we did in the business was special then. It was unique. And so if you could if you could solve that connection and introductions and exposure kind of opportunity problem, not a small one, but if you knew that what you did do was unique, and there were not hundreds and thousands of people all around who did what you do and maybe showed up even more professionally. There were a very small number of people who you had to look up to and follow in their footsteps. Very small number. And even smaller number of people who actually did what you did. And you'd meet them at places like Star Trek and sci-fi conventions, which used to be a thing. And just go rewatch Galaxy Quest if you have any questions about what that was like, and any other number of films or TV shows. But Galaxy Quest is kind of the classic version of your sci-fi.
Great flick.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That hits all sorts of good nostalgia nerves for me because I went to a bunch of those. In fact, I'd sell my early drawings and sculptures with my buddy. We'd save up our meager newspaper delivery or odd job money, and we'd rent a table in the sales hall of these big conventions, and we'd sell our drawings of monsters and our sculptures and casts that we make from our molds, and we'd make our money back and meet lots of fellow sci-fi fanatics. It was really great. But other than those rare opportunities, there was no way to meet these people and make these connections that was in your normal life.
Yeah, I mean, so there's no email, there's no internet. It really was just so grassroots, and really who you know, where you were at, and what you were into back then. It's just that's why I find people's story like yourself. They're so amazing. I mean, for lack of a better description, they are fairy tale-esque, if you know what I mean. I mean, let's be real. Alex is a very talented artist and put the effort in, but I mean, we haven't heard how he got into ILM, but I'm assuming it was based on doing the work, but also probably meeting someone in his life that might have known someone or was the person that kind of got you in the door at ILM. Is that the case?
Indeed. It is. It is exactly that. And it's even fluke. There's even just the element of the fluke and the happenstance, the coincidence, the weird fated thing that just makes it even better. So I had the opportunity to get trained up in digital tools about 5 years before I went to ILM, maybe 6. I'd studied graphic design and illustration, and I had and fine art stuff, and I was basically freelancing, doing graphic design, logos, and whatever posters, and doing my own illustration for that as well. So typography, and I'd studied that and polished my illustration chops. Always still building my sort of film-centric portfolio for imaginary projects, but doing my concept sketches and drawings in ways that looked cinematic, that looked sequential, like storyboards or like shots would be composed. So I always had that in mind, and I loaded my portfolio up with that stuff. But I was hired by a multimedia company. Talk about nostalgia. This is in the early 90s. This was a new form of digital media that was being born in the form of, early desktop computers being used to author new kinds of content. And in corporate world was the first main place where this surfaced for corporate presentations, like early versions of a PowerPoint deck.
Oh boy,
animated stuff.
That's funny,
right?
Yeah.
But this was big stuff in those
True.
days. You could do 3D animation and 2D animation in, if anyone knows Flash, kind of an early version, a precursor to Flash. And you'd then stamp the stuff onto CD-ROMs, and that's how you distribute it to your corporate clients. And you pop one of those into the corporate meeting and blow everyone away
like,
with
whoa!
Clippy doing a dance or whatever, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that was huge, sexy stuff in the corporate world. And let's not forget the corporate world had money to invest in new technology, as they still do. So that was a grand opportunity for me to get hired and paid to do my traditional drawing skills, but learn early Photoshop, and learn early 2D, early versions of Premiere or 3D tools that are no longer even here, that have been replaced with newer ones. But I got a paid internship basically to learn that stuff at this company. That went on for 5 years working in that multimedia business. And it's there that I actually learned how to be an art director. I went from being a hands-on artist only to learning how to manage a team of other artists, different disciplines, all kind of moving towards the same end result, the same vision, the same style to deliver the product on time. And learning those professional skills was huge. And I say all this long-winded backstory because it leads up to the moment where I was working for a place. I was working for a company in San Francisco that was called Rocket Science Games. And I'd never been a gamer. I'd never really been that much into games before, video games, which of course this is all pre-console, so games were in a very different, earlier state as well, PC-based mostly. And these new Macintosh desktop computers people could actually afford to have in their home actually started to have some of these games, mostly for kids, right? They were mostly point and click, little Adventure Time stories, and that's the sort of stuff that I had worked on a bunch, as well as the corporate work. So I had this experience, but it was far from film and far from the grand science fiction worlds that I had in my head. But I knew there was a connection, and I knew these digital tools were going to serve me well. And so I got this job for a while at kind of a hip new game studio in San Francisco, and I met some folks there. They introduced me to some folks over at an animation studio in San Francisco called Colossal Pictures. And Colossal Pictures was for 10 or 15 years this creative hotbed along with ILM across the bay. This was in the heart of San Francisco. And they made television commercials and music videos. And during the 80s, all their work was all over MTV and all over every hip commercial with cool, animated graphics. And every music video that had some cool animated graphics, good chance it was made at Colossal Pictures. So they had animators, directors, visual effects artists. They just employed all these creative people. And it was kind of a dream factory in itself. So I tried to get in there. I went for a roundtable interview where I showed my portfolio to a whole room full of folks. Nothing actually came of that. But about 3 weeks later, getting to the final point of the story here, the magic moment, I'm in an art supply store in Marin, coming out of the store with my arm full of stuff I've just bought. And there's a guy walking in as I'm walking out. And he says, "Hey, I know you." And I thought, I kind of think I know you. Look familiar, but I can't place it. Well, he was one of the directors at Colossal who'd been in that room. And he said, "I really liked your work." I said, "Thanks so much. That's really nice of you to say." I said, "What are you doing?" He said to me, and I said, "I'm just kind of still looking for work." I said, "What are you doing?" "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I've actually stopped working at Colossal, and I just started working at ILM."
Oh, my goodness.
Look at that.
And so, "That's great for you." I said, "That's super exciting." And we exchanged numbers and said bye-bye. Well, not that much longer after that, I got a call from the ILM art department. He had put my name in because they needed art directors. And they apparently had not been interviewing that many people with art direction experience. Again, people who'd made that little jump, not so little. Being an artist, which they also needed, but to someone who could manage the whole thing. And so they liked that about my resume, even though, and here comes the other lucky break part, I didn't have any bona fide film experience on my resume. I did not go to film school. I went to art school and graphic design, yet they took this risk on me on his recommendation, and I guess my portfolio and the way I presented myself. So that's the story of how I got there.
I knew it would be something just kind of circumstantial, right? Going to the art store and crossing paths with the right person, as Alex said, that's the fluky part of the story. It is amazing. Are these artists, are they just luckier than the rest of us, or who knows? I mean, there's something about living out west in that time period. It's like everyone kind of, it seems like everyone knew everyone, or at least crossed paths with the right people. No, that is just too cool. So, a trip to the art store landed Alex it technically landed Alex a job at ILM, and then really the rest is history. So let's kind of get into some of the ILM stuff. Now, some of your first work there was on the special editions, correct?
That is correct.
So how did that?
I came in and I was sorry, go ahead, cut you off.
When you came in, did you know which projects you were being hired to work on, or were you just coming to ILN as a general art director and you would get assigned projects as they came across?
That's exactly it. So the way the art department worked. Sorry, did you have more?
No.
You wanted to ask?
Nope. Just like random words were starting to fall out of my mouth. They weren't important. So go ahead.
I can relate. That happens to me all day long. No, the way the art department worked then, and I think pretty much still works now, is art directors in the art department are also concept artists. Although there are concept artists who are not art directors, that set of base visual skills is part of what you need to sort of either be hired as a visual effects art director or grow into that role. And you're going to be called on, depending on the size of the project or the timing or whatever, to do those things yourself, as well as manage the larger effort and be sort of a more senior level creative lead, working with the effects supervisor and all the animation soup and the CG soups and all of the rest through the whole production. So this is at ILM, it's a centralized department. And I don't know if other effects houses structured themselves this way back then. I got the feeling that it was kind of unique to have a dedicated art department acting as like a service bureau to the whole rest of the company.
Interesting.
We also had a commercials division back in those days. And so we did a lot of very big budget television commercials as well. And we would offer that as in our commercials production department, ILMCP, they called it. It was a full service agency where we provided directors as well as effect soups and design and creative services and sound stages to shoot and all of it. It was a full thing for commercials. And so that was another way that people in the art department would get, fed work. There was plenty of work, not only from film stuff, including bids that we hadn't even gotten awarded yet, just like this studio, we're trying to fight for this job, so we're going to do some gorgeous artwork to try and bring the studio in to take, consider us for this project. But also these commercials were always coming in and out, so there was loads of variety. So when I first got there, I didn't know what I was going to work on, and I knew I had to sort of spend a little bit of time just warming up. So I ended up being kind of assigned or paired up with George Hull, who was an effects art director and concept artist at the time. You may have heard of him. He's nothing short of a legend. He's just an amazing concept artist. He just finished working on Dune. He worked on Blade Runner 2049 and the Matrix movies. Just go look up George Hull.
Yeah, a few small pictures.
Shout out George Hull, Hull. He's a god among many others.
He's done a couple indie films.
One of the folks, just a few small films. So he happened to be there, and he just was wrapping up work on Jurassic Park 2: The Lost World and the Star Wars special editions, which were kind of midway through, and that's what I ended up getting assigned to. I helped him with a couple of storyboards. I was kind of his assistant, and I was shadowing him basically through the day. It's like, what's a daily? What are dailies? Yeah. There's more of them. They're called dailies. We do them every day. Got it. Okay. And so I'd follow him to dailies, and I'd sit in the dark and look at the shots every day, and I'd start to get the rhythms of this place down. It was very dazzling I was starstruck, and I had to check myself all the time, which is requirement number one for showing up at a place like that is you got to check your starstruck self.
I was going to say, Alex, like being such a huge sci-fi geek, even before Star Wars came out, and then I'm sure Star Wars just enhanced it. What was that day like when you learned that you're working on Star Wars? I mean, could you contain the fanboyism, or did you have to like run outside and scream to let the steam out?
Yeah. Ran outside. I think I ran outside to scream. And, a couple of the trusted folks that I'd come to know even in the first day or two, I think I found a way to express to them.
A couple high fives, right?
I was freaking out inside. And they being good hosts, welcomed me in and said, there, it's okay. I understand, because we're all feeling it even still. We just learned how to be cool about it. But that's okay. You geek out. You freak out. It's all right. No, it was really a very cool place to walk into. This kind of, it's such a trite thing to call it a dream factory, but it really was. It was just the art department then was this 2-level open atrium kind of lofted space with an upper level and a lower, and hanging from the ceiling and on every spare surface were just little bits of models and miniatures from movies past. And because the art department and the model shop kind of shared a history of physical art making with physical stuff, I should explain that this was just when digital was still relatively new, just a few years old in terms of being a major tool of visual effects. Physical stuff, like the model shop and miniatures, were still going strong, and they were right next door to the art department because we shared this sort of kindred spirit of making stuff physically. And so we would often hang out with the model shop folks and the art department. And I've just got I happened to be looking at my bookshelf and I came across this book. I'm going to plug this book. It's not new. It's called Sculpting a Galaxy, and it is written and put together by Lauren Peterson, who is another legend among many others in the model shop of those days. He and Don Bees and Steve Gawley and so many others who I'm not mentioning now, not remembering, just made that, they're part of the history of the old guard ILM model shop, going all the way back to Back to the Future and God knows so many other classic films they worked on. This book is pretty darn inspiring as far as just a look through, all of the models, beautiful handwork that was done. This is the stuff that I got to look at during my midnight secret tour with my buddy.
How hard? I mean, just
like that, literally that AT-AT sequence, mid animation, with the snow covered
sitting on the table. So you got to see that all staged. Wow.
I could have brushed up against it accidentally and blown it off.
Screwed up the shot. Yeah, that's right.
Screwed up the damn shot. That was risky, bringing a friend back in there. But
so even years later, Alex, when you're working there, were there some days was it just hard to focus with all that stuff in the building? Like, oh, hey, there's the AT-ATs from 1980, or there's Jabba's sail barge, there's Jabba himself. I'd imagine sometimes it was hard to just kind of put the blinders on and get to it.
Yeah, there are times. It's the pinch me, I'm dreaming thing. But the reality is, there's a period where that happens. And every once in a while you do, as in any situation you're lucky enough to be in, you do have these moments where you kind of are a little outside yourself and you pull back from the immersion in the thing you're doing and you sort of say, oh my God, look what's going on right here. Right. This is a pretty amazing moment. Wherever you are. Well, that would happen. That's a human thing. And so that would happen from time to time, even afterwards. But I will say that the work itself is so immersive. People take the work very seriously. Everyone who's there is there because of this shared passion for the work. And the work is hard work. And it's intense. It's creatively and mentally draining is kind of too negative, but it is draining. It's tiring, but you work a lot where you're thinking through problem solving. And there's a whole other level, which is cultural. You're intermixing with people who you kind of feel walk on water just because they're already there before you.
Yeah.
And so there's this feeling of imposter syndrome. How the hell did I end up here? How can I possibly pull my weight? Now that I'm here, I've got to show up and be worthy. Oh my God. So there's stage fright, imposter syndrome, insecurities. And, especially with artists, everyone has insecurities, especially at a new job. But
no, I could imagine.
brand.
I could imagine
Right?
working with other artists, and like you said, those that you already looked up to. It had to be very intimidating early on. Like, did you ever feel like some days like I shouldn't even be here?
Oh, many days. Oh, seriously. I mean, parents sitting me down with the other art director in the same room as these other art directors who've been there for a long time, and looking at the work in their portfolios and seeing how comfortably they spoke to the effects supervisors and directors when we have them come through, and how just confidently they conducted themselves, like very blasé. And then just the sheer drawing skills, the confidence of drafting. George Hull would have been, the first example for me. And I just look at his ability to bust out these architectural forms and ships. Here, I'm going to actually, I happen to just come across these copies of some of George Hull's storyboards. These are, I believe, his drawings. I'm 90% sure. If I'm miscrediting it, then apologies to whoever. But, this is the kind of thing that, storyboards
just laying around the office, right? It's like going to a manufacturing plant.
There's a nice top-down shot of the Falcon coming through Bespin Towers. I don't believe that shot ever actually is in the movie like that, but that was a version of it. And I'll get more to some Bespin stuff later. But, this is the stuff I was looking at. It's like, basically, look at this ship. I'm 90% sure that's the George Hull. Anyway, I mean, the basic subtext that you get every day, the message you get is, do better, dude. Drive yourself, do better. Draw the best you've ever drawn right now, and fast. Fast.
Did it ever get too competitive, or you liked kind of being pushed to get better every day you walked in?
Well, it's kind of part of it's the price you're paying to be there. It's part of what it takes to be there. And so you don't find yourself, I mean, on a good day, you're not complaining about it. You're trying to rise to the occasion. You're trying not to beat yourself up for being less than, and you're trying to really apply yourself. And then when you do get some victories, however small or fleeting they may be, you use those to bolster yourself and go on to show up another day and do it again and do better. And some of that is not only showing your best work and putting yourself out there again, but there's also learning how to step back and wait, listen, sometimes shut up, just not say, especially when you're new and you're coming to understand the hierarchy of leadership and authority and how you treat people with respect. Well, it's a really conversational place where people don't tiptoe around. Everyone's speaking their minds and having these confident conversations about how this might be done or how this might look. And so it's easy to get seduced by that. And they go, oh, this is super casual. I'll just chime in now with my thought. And maybe that's okay, but you also got to have that sixth sense about, maybe I jumped on that a little too fast. Anyway, it's that diplomatic stuff, those soft skills that you learn also.
Yeah, there we go. Soft skills. You young people out there, pay attention. There's a lot of great advice coming from Alex here. Soft skills, in my opinion, are sometimes even more important than the technical stuff.
Indeed.
If you can't function with other humans, you could be the greatest artist, programmer, designer, whatever you want, and you're probably not going to make it that far because you need other humans in your life to accomplish goals.
You need them in your life, and you need them to be basically on your side and want to have you around if you want them to continue hiring you and keep paying you.
Alex, when you were given the project of working on the special editions, was it widely known already that these were happening? Did the greater populace know that there's going to be special editions of Star Wars made with new visual effects, or were you one of the first people to know about this project when it started?
I'm going to be tapping into some foggy memories here about exactly when the word was released PR-wise or if it leaked, but I can pretty confidently say when I first started there, it was top secret. And that was also an example of the black box secret lockdown that you sort of packed, the code that first rule of ILM or working in any of these industries, you don't talk about what we're working on at all, anywhere. And so that was a well-kept secret. And that's also a kind of a fun but sometimes difficult thing, is to keep a secret like that, especially to people who would so love to know about it. Not to do anything bad with it, just to know,
right.
and you can't tell them.
I can only
So,
imagine.
That was a thing. That was a thing.
Alex, kind of transitioning to your work on Empire Special Edition, we have some of the shots up on the stream now. Were you mostly working on kind of fleshing out and adding depth to the backgrounds on Bespin? Was that one of your main tasks for the Special Edition?
That's right. Yes, and to be clear, my job was the not flashy job. I mean, this is definitely the entry level. Welcome to the art department. We need help getting these shots done in a hurry, and anything you can do to jump in is great. But this was not glamorous work, and a lot of the time I was indeed kind of retouching and finessing the work that had already been composed and largely completed by other people. I should also say that matte painting comes into this, because that's a lot of what I worked on, was matte paintings, digital matte paintings. And
well, I love that you sent us two shots, and one I think would probably been the original, where there's a window and it's just white. But then Alex comes in, and if you go to the next shot, we get that matte painting of Bespin's city structure.
That's right. All those cities. So that's basically what a lot of the additions was to flesh out and expand the environment of Cloud City, aka Bespin, that you'd see in the background. And they just wanted to make the original matte paintings, which we all just love and revere, done full old school, like really paintings by luminaries such as Michael Pangrazio and others. He's one of the many luminaries from the old, Paul Houston, a bunch of others. Of course, I'm forgetting a lot of them, but who did the honest to God matte paintings for the originals. Now digital matte paintings were starting to become commonplace. And as all the digital effects and the special editions, true for all of them, this was all an experiment. This was a test run that George was basically leading in order to pave the way for his vision of the prequels. And ultimately, it helped pave the way for digital effects, tentpole movies as we know them. So it was a lot of using digital matte painting techniques, which essentially comes down to Photoshop, a mixture of using 3D modeling tools for your base forms, and then Photoshop to add details, lighting, and actually finish the whole thing.
You
out.
actually, again,
I had Photoshop
I'm sorry, Alex, you actually gave us a fantastic kind of iterative take on, I'm guessing, using these digital tools to create a matte painting. It looks like you're just kind of fleshing out the outside of Bespin, and you have your basic models, and then it looks like on the next slide you added some texture, and then final you added all the shadowing and even more textures to get that final shot. And that was all like you're saying that was brand new back then, doing the digital mats. So like you're one of the first to kind of get in and create backgrounds in this style.
It was kind of mind blowing. I was already I'd been using Photoshop for years as an illustration tool, but the whole idea blew my mind. I remember now. I can remember the feeling that, wait a minute, these pixels I'm pushing around and this line I just drew and this highlight I just painted is literally going to go on to the movie, and it's going to be on a big screen. What is that going to even look like? And it sounds like that's just excitement, but it was exciting, but it was also fear. It's like the pressure to make sure that it looked right was huge. And then learning what does look right and what looks wrong, not just on my screen, my monitor, how that translates. And when we see it in dailies, I'm looking at it going, oh my God, that's the thing I just painted yesterday. That little tiny building way off in the corner. And the line I drew looks totally black. I thought it was just going to be gray, or it looks totally wrong. And that tells me, oh, I've got to correct it for a film now. It's not just for what it looks like on my monitor. There's a whole learning curve there about the technical adjustments you have to make for your art to actually serve the function that they need to and blend in properly. Kind of mind-boggling stuff to be learning all at once.
Yeah, we now have it looks like it's a widescreen, I'm guessing concept art. I don't know if you did it digitally or painting of Cloud City's skyline. Oh yeah, matte painting. So, and that looks like
is that this one you're looking at?
No, it's the the fully colorized orange hue. It looks more like
the moons in the background.
Oh yeah, the orange. Okay, so that's the that was a fun shot to work on. That was the whole Millennium Falcon landing on the platform shot. I believe it comes zooming through the buildings, and it lands right here. So I think you might have a version of this. I'm not sure, but if
yeah, we do. It's a great shot. It's like a stage shot. You see the Falcon coming in, then underneath it, you've got the widescreen version of the city itself.
That's right. So as you can see there and here, it's like what I was given were simple computer models, computer generated models, and this whole composition done by someone on whatever digital environment that they were building, but they were super simple shapes, literally like styrofoam cup kind of complexity. And my job was to add all the windows and the seams and the little construction details that make it look like a building and make it look big. And then all the dirt and streaks that make it look like it's sort of cement or metal that's been out in the elements for years and years. Those are the touches that make things look real. And in fact, in the first Star Wars, that's what was the signature look of the Star Wars world, was that hardware was used and hardware was aged and leaking oil and pockmarked and scarred and just industrial wear and tear, basically, elemental wear and tear. That was a signature part of the whole look of the Star Wars world and has continued to be. But that was not the norm for sci-fi back in the day. That was more shiny and new and perfect and gleaming, as a futuristic kind of.
There's Star Trek sci-fi and then Star Wars sci-fi, completely different visual looks.
That's it.
Well,
and I do like Star Trek. I wasn't taking a jab at the Trek. Star Trek's great.
No diss on.
Yeah. While you were working on all this stuff, Alex, did you know, like in the back of your head, that you were basically building processes that would be used for the next 2, 3, 4 decades to bring films to life in a completely different way?
Yes and no. I knew I was part of something that was super exciting. We knew that this was innovation, stuff that had never been done before. It was dazzling to watch and yet really hard to do and make look right. So, there was some awareness of that. And we knew at some point that this was all lining up for something bigger that George had planned. But he was keeping his big plans for the prequels pretty well secret from us too. That rumors to that effect didn't start up even inside till sometime later. It's one of those weird things where to look back on something and say, did you know, or ask myself, did I know then what it would become? I got to be honest, probably not, because you're so focused, as we all are, in the here and the now.
Right.
You crystal ball and make big sort of declarations like that about the future with kind of fuzzy, very fuzzy. It's always very vague. I can imagine that the thing I'm working on now could open up the entire, future in this area, and then again, it might not. you don't know, and so you're so focused on just getting it done on time.
Yeah,
and meeting your production deadline at the day, and then kind of celebrating when the release comes out and resting for a bit before you start it all up again. That's kind of where you're focused. And seeing your historical importance on the grand timeline is something we don't tend to spend a lot of time. Certainly then didn't spend a lot of time thinking of. I think we just all wanted it to get better. We knew that it was kind of dazzling in some ways, and yet even our visual critical eyes knew that it was a young medium, and the CG looked a little janky. We would never say so.
I was going to ask, Alex, over time, do you now feel like the special edition edits did indeed improve upon the original trilogy? Or like you said, do you feel like it almost kind of locked them into that era of early CG now where, we all love them, but if you look at it, you're like, yeah, that's definitely 90s era VFX.
Yeah. Oh, I've been reckoning a lot with this very thing on Corridor and a couple of the other conversations I've been having lately. Looking back, the whole exercise of looking back 2 decades or whatever, and multiple decades, and assessing something, as you say, that was sort of culturally near and dear, that we're all sentimentally have some fondness for, and even aesthetically still enjoy. But technically, visually, the state of the art has advanced so much and so fast that it's very difficult to look back clear-eyed or look back and forgive it all. It's just our brain won't let us completely. Some people have an easier time of it than others. My brain is professionally trained to be critical. I'm sure.
You're very critical.
And pick it apart. It's kind of like
look, that shade's off. That shading's off. 20, 30 years later, it's still off.
Exactly. And sometimes it's worse. So I look back on the special edition stuff to answer your question, and I think some of it really holds up well. And I have to say the matte paintings and the environments really are some of the most amazing stuff that to me is pretty timeless. I think it's, and that's because the techniques used were this smooth evolution from the art form that came before. Matte paintings and miniatures kind of fed into the digital tools. They fed into the digital version of those things really well. Characters and creatures are harder, and they're harder to get right. So if you take Yoda as an example, now we've got a digital Yoda that's completely successful, although there are plenty that would argue. Reasonable fans can debate whether they prefer the practical Yoda of Frank Oz and the model shop time, or the digital Yoda of now. But there's pros and cons to each. Obviously some of the creature and character work of the time doesn't hold up as well now, but I can honestly say it was early days, and so I look back with a certain pride, just knowing what we were accomplishing when we were.
You're a pioneer. I mean, they are, like you said. Let's be real. I know George said he felt like he needed some of those edits. I think it's more of what you said. It was practice. It was kind of laying the groundwork for what he wanted to do with the prequels, and really go full digital sets, digital actors, digital characters.
That's right. And I got to say, even though he at times later, after the prequels were out, was strong on it, was really intent on messaging the digital aspect. What I loved about the prequels, from an effects point of view, is that they still used a lot of miniatures, as I'm sure you guys do know. They relied on a lot of old school techniques, and as I like to say, I'm a sentimental fool for the marriage of both of those. I love the marriage of the state of the art in digital and the state of the art, as it were, old school in miniatures, because to me they both accomplish parts of the whole really well, and to put them together perfectly is the best version. And so to me,
that's kind of where we're at. These
great example.
That setup's kind of where we're at these days. Star Wars has almost gone back to using futuristic digital, but also relying on the practical. All right, we're coming up on our hour, so I don't want to keep you too late. But I do want to move into your work on clones real quick, and then I have one question on Mando before we let you go. So, Alex, for clones, did they specifically bring you in to help with Kamino and the clone parade or circus or whatever you called it, where I have your shots up now, and I love the different takes you have on them. It's for those that are listening to the podcast version, the scenes I believe Alex worked on or enhanced were when Kenobi's at Kamino touring the facility with Tan Wee and the other guy, and it looks like there was various different takes on the scene where Kenobi's watching the clones put their armor on for the first time. So that's the concept art we're looking at. And, there's one where it's just a carousel of helmets. I love this one. It looks like you had the idea of them going down in pods and getting outfitted with the armor. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. So that's a great example of what the art department and concept artists do. It's not just painting pretty pictures, but fancy pants term we all use is ideation or iteration. They basically we're trying lots of different ideas out. It could work this way. It could work that way. It's not just about how something looks. Also, it's about how it works, because that's going to affect choreography. If this clone trooper is going to come up and then stand on a platform and then ride down like an elevator, as opposed to taking the helmet, putting it on and walking away, or disappearing down some escalator or whatever, those all have impacts on animation and actors, etc., depending on what we design. To answer your question, though, this whole sequence was the art department being brought in to sort of help out with a 911, because almost all of the initial visual design work for the prequels was handled out at the ranch by the art department that George assembled out there, full of awesome, amazing artists, including but not limited to Ryan Church and, of course, Doug Chang, most notably and famously, but loads of others as well, doing storyboards and concept art, costume design, Ian McCaig. Some of those people were borrowed from our San Rafael art department to go work on various aspects. And then we had our effects art director dedicated, as we did on any big movie that would come through ILM. There was a dedicated visual effects art director on that film. So ours, for I think all three of the prequels, was Alex Yeager, a longtime veteran at ILM and of the art department. He's awesome. Jaeger, Alex, look him up. Awesome work. He's still with ILM, by the way, still doing awesome work. So Alex was sort of in our art department, art director. And it was, as we got into shot production and asset creation, I was working on another movie, whatever it was at the time, but I'd see it happening all around me. So there was always this vicarious feeling that you could kind of keep up with some of the stuff that was going on. And we would also get to see some of their shot dailies where they'd finish a sequence and we'd either sneak in, just like the old days, sneaking into movie theaters, or we'd be invited in to just sit in the back row while this other movie team looked at their dailies.
Right.
And we get to see a little of what they're working on. Well, it was in that context that they came to us, the ranch came to us with kind of a 911 to get some visual design work for this sequence fleshed out. And they had basically just broadly done some animatics, super simple set design and sketches, but they hadn't, for whatever reason, they weren't happy. George wasn't happy. It needed more work. And that's why we got thrown onto this Camino sequence. So several of us, including myself, Peter Rubin, Michael Brunsfeld, a couple of other folks, those are the two that I worked most closely with. And of course, not to mention some of our 3D previs artists in the art department also. Larry Chandler, Lewis Katz, Daniel Slavin, among others. All of them were contributing as well, and we basically fleshed out this sequence. And what you're seeing the concept art of is just some of those micro things. You know, as always, these are shots that go by in a flash. These are sequences that come and go, but they constitute a whole project for us, a mini project. For X number of weeks, we're focused on really diving into this. And they built a miniature set of that whole clone arena. I may have a photo or two up of the set. I can't remember if I shared those with you or not. But they did a wonderful, speaking of the hybrid, you know, old school, new school approach, that whole clone arena was done as a miniature. And then, of course, all the ships flying around and all the, you know, they built that miniature beautiful for what?
I got to ask, did they make all the little clones too, or just the structure?
Just the structure. And then all the clones and all the human figures or clone figures are all digital. So, and that's only true for that wide shot that you see there. And then there's that sort of giant anonymous ship that's floating up at the top of the dome.
Yes.
The sort of mothership thing. Nobody ever explained what that was for. Nobody ever told me exactly what it was for. I don't remember if it was from a sketch that I saw from the ranch or whether I invented it myself. But I think I was throwing in just different things to add epic awe and visual interest to this shot. And nothing says, you know, how can I make this environment look even bigger? It's like an arena, but how can I make it look like the biggest arena you've ever seen? Well, I'll put a blimp in the middle of it. Yeah, it's got to be a big arena to have a blimp.
You actually call it the mothership in your drawings.
There you go. I think I might have named that sentimentally off of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was a favorite film of mine. Because I don't know if you remember, but the mothership at the end of that, which is called the mothership.
Oh yeah.
And you've got all the little aliens you can see in the windows looking down on you from the mothership in Close Encounters at the end. So that was my little tip of the hat inside Easter egg tribute to Close Encounters.
Beautiful.
So,
but you did include a shot where you can see the true scale of the arena, though, at the very end. I have it up now. But like you said, by adding in the mothership, adding in those drone ships, I think is what you called them, where the Kaminoans or the Kaminoans would go in and they're in their pods checking on the clones growing. That's right. But it really does give it that arena a sense of scale that I don't even think you get in the movie itself, at least looking from this shot right here. So that's great insight.
You know, it's interesting when you're working as an illustrator or designer and on something that has already been really established really solidly, the whole world. You know, you have Doug Chang as sort of senior production designer in the effects aspect, overseeing this, and he's carrying on the legacy of Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston and all of the, you know, amazing designers that worked on Star Wars original world, designing that whole look, just the style. And then Doug Chang is and the team are interpreting that and updating it in some ways. Then, you know, someone like me or my art department team get brought in as stringers to quickly jump in like firefighters and just kind of pinch hit for a few specific things. We've got to mimic their style. We've got to understand it. Luckily, we've been looking at it and appreciating it for years, but suddenly we've got to like really kind of obey those rules. It was super exciting to try to like, okay, I'm gonna do my best Doug Chang now. I'm gonna, as I'm designing these curvy shapes.
Is that hard as an artist trying to copy someone else's style? Is that difficult for an artist? Like a direct copy?
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Well, there's literally copying something, and then there's copying the style, and
emulating their style, I guess. Right?
Emulating it. Yeah, we as designers, we use pretentious terms like design language. I'm imitating. I'm speaking the same design language.
I love it. I love it. Yes,
we love stuff like that. We love highfalutin sounding stuff like that. So, but it's true. It is. It actually is accurate because it's not copying the thing. I'm designing a new thing.
Got
this weird helmet dispensing machine, whatever, and this weird conveyor belt thing to kind of get the clones suited and then out onto the field efficiently, but cinematically. I've got to kind of do it in the Star Wars house style, and it is hard for some to do that. Sometimes it's a willingness thing. Like some artists are very proud of their own style,
right?
And they say, I don't want to work in anyone else's style. I've got my own. But part of being in this business is it's so much about collaboration. And so much about giving yourself over, getting your own pride out of the way, and giving yourself over to the look of the movie, the desires of the director. It's about the director's story. And when you're working for a production designer designing the look in the world, it's about their vision for the world that you have to come in and bring to life. It's not about your ego at that moment. And that's another big lesson of working in a place like that. Again, for anyone who's hoping or aiming for the experience of getting to there early in career and want to work in a place like this, super important piece of advice is, how to manage your own ego again and how to know when to check it and to be absolutely happy to just be in the working and drawing in the service of someone else's vision. That's not only okay, it's part of the journey. It's part of your job,
Did you... I know we got to let you go here soon, but did you witness or did you yourself ever push back against George on certain wants that he had for the special editions or Attack of the Clones?
No, I can say that I didn't. And the way that I would have pushed back, and that would be far too strong a word, would be through drawings and some back and forth. Okay. But no, at that stage, my relationship with him was not a conversation. It was a one-way communication, pretty much.
Yes, sir, you got it.
Yeah.
And in this case, it wasn't us sitting around a table looking at things. On many other movies, I had the opportunity to do that either live, literally over a physical table with the director at various times, looking at art, having that kind of conversation, or via our version of video chat in those days, video conferencing. We would do that quite a bit. And then even so, you're being very diplomatic. You're pushing back in the most diplomatic way. Right. And often you're helped by the effects supervisor, who is sort of the top of the ILM or visual effects hierarchy, is the effects soup, is sort of at the top of that pyramid. And they are the key point of contact for the studio and the director. And a lot of the communication does get funneled. As an art director in the effects side, I would often talk to the production designers and art directors on the production side, the people who designed and built the sets, physical sets. I would often talk to them, artist to artist, sort of environment, world designer to world designer. But the director, you treat with respect.
Did you ever get to experience any of his famous stamp sessions that we've seen on the behind the scenes where he'd come into it looked like a concept art room, and he would, I think he had like a special stamp for the ones like it, and then, all right, I'm out of here. Did you ever get to witness that? Is that what's the pressure like when he's in there doing that? Because I'm sure everyone's like, "Ooh, pick me," or is it everyone's pretty much
it's
happy?
Pressure. It's hot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And if you're not actually even in the room, you'll see the results of it very shortly thereafter, because the art will come out and you're looking through the stack or looking on the wall and like, okay, I know the answer. All right,
no stamp on my portfolio today. Yeah.
No, it honestly is often a shopping. We're providing the director with a shopping excursion to this beautiful boutique of gorgeous artwork that has been custom made, like you see in some, high-end fashion shop where the wealthy patron goes in and basically they've been laid out a dozen amazing outfits, and they can go, no, yes, combine that with that. And I'm being very caricatured here, but it kind of feels that way.
I
sometimes.
think that works. That's all. I love that explanation of what it's like. All
Alex,
right, so go ahead, Nick.
Well, I have one quick question, one off-topic, one off Star Wars question for you before we let you go. I don't know if you track the internet or if you track, what young people are into now, but all of the sudden, within the past 4 or 5 months, there has been a massive resurgence of love for The Mummy 1999, which you worked on. Is it special to see something?
I've been aware of this. A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Is it special to see that 22 years later, a movie that was loved back then has just like taken over pop culture and like the minds of the youth all of the sudden for seemingly no reason other than Brendan Fraser?
That's a very good reason. Reason enough. Yes, the answer is yes. And it's really, gratifying is the best word for me to see it happen. Because I genuinely did enjoy working on that movie. I've talked about it a whole bunch. Happy to keep talking about it to an extent. But I mean, I had a great time working on it. We've talked a lot, and I've talked before about all the different ways that the art department at ILM or a concept artist or an art director can have an impact on a movie. Sometimes it's just a little bit. Sometimes it's just a tiny little piece of a thing that you contributed that goes by in a second. Sometimes it's a medium size, a few shots, and you're proud of those because they had their impact on that scene. And other times it's stuff for a whole movie. And in that case with The Mummy, that director came to us really open and eager for our collaboration to help him visually design all the effects in the movie. It's not like it came to us pre-designed, as was often the case plenty of other situations. So I got the chance, along with all the talented folks in the art department, to just do this group brainstorm with him and to be involved at the very beginning of that creative process. And Stephen Sommers, the director of the Mummy movies, so enthusiastic, contagiously, boyishly enthusiastic. He's the sci-fi nerd who never, Peter Pan syndrome, right? He never grew up. And we'd all get that way. Get in a room with a bunch of geeks or get on a call, and those sessions were super fun. So I kind of continued then as the art director and key visual designer on the effects part of that movie, and it just kind of grew from there to the point where I became known around ILM. My nickname was the Mummy Guy. I was teased about that in a friendly way, because I'd be like, okay, I love that, but I'm now doing other things, folks. I'm not just, no, you're the Mummy Guy. Yeah, you're the Mummy Guy. Deal with it. So yeah, it feels great. I love the fact that it's getting a new round of love.
Awesome.
It should. It's a great franchise. I love the Mummy 2. I'm not so sold on the Scorpion King, but I do love my man Dwayne. So I'm not gonna pick on him.
No, don't knock Dwayne.
That was one of his first. That's before he got into his hardcore exercise routine. He still had a little of that WWE chub to him. But hey, look at him now.
I'm going to let you say that. Good. Glad you said that.
It's all right. Yeah. I don't know if he is going to watch the Star Wars Time show this week in between filming whatever 50 movies he's doing this year, but you never know. You never know. Well, Alex, I don't want to keep you too long, so I do appreciate the time. You're just fantastic guest, great stories, and I hope those artists that do tune into this show, because we actually do have a fair amount that come from Instagram, the toy photography wing of artistry, but also, as we say childishly, the real ass painters, because I think Alex had a lot of good anecdotes and tips on how to become successful or how to kind of maintain and stay on course even though things may not be going your way. You never know. You may be in an art store one day and walk past someone working at an ILM or Disney or who knows. But
stranger things have happened.
I really appreciate the time and the stories you told. I know there's probably another couple hours we could talk, but we are going to let you go so you can kind of get back to your life and not let the Star Wars Time show eat up your entire Tuesday here.
Hey, it has been so fun to go down this wonderful rabbit hole memory lane with you guys. I've had a blast. Happy to come back anytime you want to have me back. So it's fun to talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, we may have to take you up on that and kind of get some of your thoughts on where Star Wars has kind of gone from when you last worked on it. The sequel trilogy, what Disney's doing here. I think you'd have some great insights. You threatened the Mandalorian
question. You did threaten the Mandalorian.
You know what? If you're all right for another 5 minutes or so.
I'm fine. I don't want to eat your schedule up, but I'm fine for another.
Maybe
5. Hit me.
Let's save it as a tease. How's that? We'll work on getting Alex back on and spending more time just kind of talking about Star Wars, where it's gone, and some of the technology they're using these days to create it. So for now, we will say goodbye. Make sure to check him out on Instagram at Alexander Laurent. He also has it looks like you got a YouTube channel on there, and I'm guessing your own Studio LXL.
That's right. That's just my website. That's right. AlexLaurent.net.
But we have a fairly
thanks so much
big Instagram audience, so check him out, give him a follow. You can see some of his other work, some of the surrealism stuff he was talking about early on that he got from his mother, because it is pretty wild looking, like this thing with 2 legs and horns and a beak coming out of its ear. I love it. I love this type of stuff. I like the way you think, Alex. So
thank you. Thanks for having me on again. I really had a good time.
Thanks again.
Thanks
all right, we'll talk to you.
Take it easy, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, Nick, let's switch us back over to the 2 screens here. There we go. Oh, I got some
that.
Random technology displayed on the screen right now, but we'll figure it out.
Are we like tripled into infinity?
No, it's just showing like an application I use to shrink images instead of the browser. But hey, I got it fixed because I am a technical genius.
There you go.
So yeah, that was pretty cool, man. What a guy. Very generous with his stories and knowledge and advice for those of you real ass painters out there. I really do think he had a lot of good things to say, at least to keep people motivated. I love Nick learning that yes, these artistic types do have very high end type of their own language. I was going to ask him, so you guys are talking about design language. Have you ever referred to each other as real ass painters? Is that something that comes up at ILM?
Bounce around the office. It was an incredible conversation as a former aspiring creative who has now kind of fallen out of that hobby / profession. It was really incredible to hear his story and how he got there and everything. And I will say that, like, one of the questions that we asked him earlier was, would you rather have worked back then or now? And having tried to get into the industry now is very intimidating, especially for a person who already has relatively low self-esteem. Like if you make something and you think it's incredible, but then all it takes is a 2-minute trip down a YouTube rabbit hole and you realize, like, holy shit, like I'm not even close. And obviously, things didn't pan out for me, but I'm glad that things panned out for Alex and everything worked out in his favor throughout his career. Because if it didn't, then hell, we may not have gotten some of our favorite movies. And it was truly awesome to have that conversation with him. He's
a good guy. I mean, definitely great at telling some stories, and has lived some experiences that I think our fans would appreciate or hope to live themselves. So awesome. Good job there, Spencer. He was a good dude. Before we get into our topics here, I want to keep it to our 2.5 hour or less time frame. That's been kind of nice these days. It keeps Nick happy. It keeps the wife happy. And it keeps my head from hurting. Because if you see look what happens to my head when I wear a hat. It starts to bruise my forehead. Because I have
mine too.
I have the skin of like a fragile peach or something at the store. You can't touch it too much or put too much pressure, or it starts to go black and blue. But yeah, that was awesome. So if you missed that, for the first hour 15 of the show, we talked with Mr. Alex Laurent, who is a visual effects art director. Worked for ILM on the Star Wars Special Editions and Attack of the Clones, which was the kind of the last blurb we just had, where, he was essentially hired to do spot duty, to really all hands on deck to help out the the Lucasfilm artists that might have needed some additional hands on that Camino scene. But good stuff there, so make sure to check that out either on the audio only or after this live stream ends. You should be able to view it in full. All right, my friend, before we get into the topics, I've got some good news, at least for us and our expenses around town. And that's the fact that thanks to our great fans, we have been renewed with Manscaped for another deal. So we appreciate that. Yeah, we appreciate that.
There we go. And that doesn't mean that your job's over, people. Right. That means that in fact you have more work to do. You have more.
Spend that money.
More body wash.
Get those replacements. Like we've been saying, you need the PP 4.0, the Performance Package 4.0, but you also need those things that aren't sustainable, like ball wipes and creams and razor blades. Get on the Star Wars Time Show hook. So before we move on, Nick, I do have some words from our sponsor. Okay, so support for the Star Wars Time Show is brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. That's right, the leaders in male grooming. Their 4th generation performance package absolutely changed the grooming game along with their refined body wash. See, we're finally promoting the body wash to round out your hygiene routine. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped for their shower time routine by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code SWTS. That's right, SWTS for Star Wars Time Show. All right, so, last week I discussed how right before the show I had a grooming session with the Lawnmower 4.0, and it went off without a hitch. I didn't lose any testicles, no scrotums were scratched, and it actually worked out because after I calmed down from my little rant last week on the crash truck episode, if any of you missed that, I kind of had a moment when the cast started, and I was going to cancel a trip out to the coast, but after the show and some Star Wars time therapy, in addition to using the Lawnmower 4.0 to trim up my nether regions, I was like, you know what? I can't leave these nicely shaven balls to the boring Ohio weather. I'm taking them to the beach, putting them in a swimsuit, so thank you, Manscaped, for that. But in addition to using the Lawnmower 4.0, Nick and I both wash our bodies with Manscaped's refined body wash. I'm telling you, fellas, the ladies will love this signature scent. You and your boys will be oh so fresh and so clean when you start off your self-care routine with the ultimate body wash. All right, so you can get stuff like this, the Performance Package 4.0, the Lawnmower 4.0, the Weed Whacker, or just get them all in that Performance Package over on Manscaped.com. All right, because we're huge fans of it, and so should you. In particular, the body wash, the ball deodorant, and the ball toner, which is the little spray. Let's say, I was at the beach, did a little swimming, and I'd come into the hotel, watch some football. I'd grab some of that spray and just give myself a little spritz down there just to revitalize the wonderful smell that Manscaped products can provide. All right, so don't forget, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code SWTS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code SWTS at manscaped.com. Keep your balls trimmed, fresh, and clean with Manscaped. All right. I need to put in another order now that we're, back on the hook here, buddy.
We're back in, yeah.
That's right. I'm just going to leave.
Got my underwear in. Feel good. There we go.
I'm going to grab a few more of those too because they definitely do keep things aerated down there. All right, my friend, we'll keep things moving here so we don't take too long today. But real quick, before I get into our exclusive that was just a complete fucking dud because we're like some form of cancer to the Star Wars leak scene. Like
Reddit, it seems like we're persona non grata. Yeah, people just don't like us on Reddit. They don't let us post stuff on Reddit. I don't get it. And apparently that's the only place where you can get picked up now in Star Wars land is on the Reddit.
It's odd. It's odd because Nick, today I looked. I was telling you offline, and I'm not attacking Bespin Bulletin, although I did send them our exclusive and no comment. Not even like, hey, thanks. It's like, whatever, man. I get it. People send it to Star Wars Theory, send it to Star Wars News Network. Not even a fucking like emoji, or just go fuck your. I would have preferred a, hey, quit fucking DMing us, block. I would have preferred that versus being ignored, but whatever. Because apparently interesting shit and stuff that makes it to the front page of leaks with comments is stuff like today from Bespin Bulletin, The Mandalorian has started filming.
Started filming?
For real.
What?
Like that's one of the lead fucking posts on Star Wars leaks on Reddit. It's not even a fucking leak. I mean, the actors have announced it. Lateef on Instagram, the stuntman, has basically showed himself walking into the studio every day to get ready to film. So I don't know. I guess I'm just confused as to what is a leak and what makes it to Star Wars Reddit leaks. Because anymore, Nick, it seems like only something has started filming or wrapped filming makes the cut there. But whatever, I digress. I knew it was going to happen, and I still contend we got a fucking bitchin' exclusive for Kenobi. But before we get to that, because I'm sure none of our fans took the time to read the post because it would require reading, and I guess I don't blame them. But real quick, Lego Terrifying Tales dropped last Friday. My kid fired it up on her own. It definitely pays homage to Lego Star Wars properties before it. It even kind of includes some characters from recent Lego properties, so you definitely want to check that out. But the point I want to make here, Nick, and I'm sure you didn't tune into it, and that's quite all right. You don't have little ones around and that know how to use a remote these days.
I do not.
But I will recommend to anyone that might have just been like, yeah, whatever, I'll watch it if the kids want to watch it, or if you're just like, I'm Star Wars cultured, I'm not going to watch a Lego animated thing. The very last short to me is Star Wars What If, and it deals with Luke and what would have happened if he actually joined the Empire versus getting picked up by Kenobi. And I thought it was rather, they added in the cheekiness, so it was a little more slapdicky than what we've seen in Marvel's What If. But I still completely enjoyed the concept of seeing, it's just great. What Luke and Darth Vader get into, like on the Death Star, it's fucking perfect Lego Star Wars humor. Let's just say they reenact one of the moments that Luke and Leia share in Star Wars on the Death Star. It's just fantastic having it between father and son. So if you've been put off by the idea of Lego Terrifying Tales, I do recommend at least checking out the last short, because to me it's probably what we're only ever going to get from a what if standpoint in Star Wars. So if you've been liking that in Marvel, it is a kind of a fun way to see how that would play out in Star Wars, albeit through the Lego lens. All right. So let's get on to that exclusive, Nick, which, I don't think anyone that listens regularly has to guess where it came from. So I can tell you it's as legit as it fucking gets, all right? Without naming names or anything. My connections in the stunt business have their own connections, and let's just say one of them worked on the Kenobi production, and in passing, stories were exchanged. Sadly, it truly was just kind of an in-passing conversation, as my contact could not answer some of the questions I had as follow-ups to what he was telling me. Now, I would caution anyone that considers leaks of this nature that could be a spoiler to ruin your time watching Kenobi. You may want to tune out for a few minutes. I promise you this stuff is legit. This is no poo flinging here, okay? You never know, some specifics could get cut, but in terms of what I was fed, it's very general, and it to me, I think it answers a lot of questions we've had about, in particular, the rematch that Disney themselves, Lucasfilm themselves, has teased for Kenobi since its official introduction last December, right, Nick? It's never been a secret that Vader and Kenobi would tussle again in this show, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least, we never thought it was going to be a secret. We always thought that this was going to end up happening.
I did some research, because unlike most assholes on this planet these days, when I hear something, regardless of the source, I'm still going to dive in a little bit. And I actually looked like rematch or Vader Kenobi fight in Kenobi. And there's tons of shit from last year. Like, so this has been put out there. I believe Kathleen Kennedy, the rematch of the century, that type. So great. That's not our exclusive, all right? So the title here, Vader and Kenobi rematch details for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, plus Hayden screen time potential. Because we've been on this stupid show before wondering, how is Hayden going to be used? You don't bring him back just to shove him in the armor. We kind of took it and ran with, oh yeah, we'll get a bunch of flashback shit, so on and so forth. But now with what I know, and I'm not saying that flashbacks may not happen, that was a question I asked, and there was no confirmation. He's like, listen, I didn't hear that. I don't know. All I know is X, Y, and Z. So here's our X, Y, and Z. And one of these confirms the leak we talked about a few shows back from Star Wars News Network, and where they had that concept art of Vader in his healing chamber. So we can also confirm that now. It happens. There is a scene with Hayden in the armor, all gashed up, as my source said, and the helmet kind of going back on, just like we saw in Empire. So everything Star Wars News Network shared there, the graphic of Hayden being all beat up, I actually think I had it here. Yeah, that's all going to happen. You're going to see, it's not going to be a puppet like Rogue One. You will see Hayden out of the armor, all gashed up, white, pale looking, with essentially getting redressed. Who knows what's going to precede that? But in terms of the rematch, and in the article, if you're looking, I actually put the rematch and then in parentheses ES. The rematch is. So here is the meat of the leak, or of this exclusive. So according to our sources, Obi-Wan and Darth Vader are actually going to interact multiple times throughout Kenobi. All right? And they will be meeting in the flesh. Because one of the things I put out there is like, maybe they get around some of this shit with the Force flash fights that they used in the sequels. And he's like, no. They meet multiple times. They have multiple interactions in the flesh. No Force bullshit. They are present with each other. So that's the first kind of big thing. It isn't just a rematch. There are multiple encounters between master and former apprentice, or brothers, if you will. We can also confirm, and I thought this was a great way to kind of explain how these interactions are going to build upon each other. Because what our source told me is that these interactions between Kenobi and Vader are going to be very similar, if not identical, to how they staged the fights in The Phantom Menace between Darth Maul. For example, you get flashes of Maul, you see where he's headed, then you have that first little battle on Tatooine between Qui-Gon and Maul, all right? We're going to get very similar scenes in Kenobi where it could just be a quick tussle, like, oh shit, Vader, oh, Anakin, that's Anakin, and blah, 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 and then Kenobi runs away, or Vader has to get away, probably Kenobi. But these small interactions are going to ultimately build to a Duel of the Fates showdown. The big rematch that Kennedy and a lot of people at Lucasfilm have been teasing. Now, the source does not know the result of this rematch, but us being fanboys, I think it's going to be a safe bet that Kenobi is going to win again, right? It would play into a lot of the lines Vader says on the Death Star in episode 4. And as I brought it to my friend, he's like, well, dude, lines and scenes are only as good as the most current ones that precede them. So while, people like me could get all salty, like, well, when Vader says, I haven't felt that presence since it was about Mustafar, right? Well, it's probably no longer going to be about Mustafar. It's probably now going to be about these battles 8 years prior that they were having between each other in Kenobi. And again, Vader's line, like when we last met, you know, I was still a piece of shit, but now I have figured out myself. I am now the master of my powers and this relationship. All right. And I also think, Nick, one of the lines that could have gotten screwed in Return of the Jedi, or these interactions are probably now going to make this line make more sense. And it's when Luke and Vader are talking on Endor. And Luke says, like, listen, Dad, I know there's still good in you. I'm going to snap you the fuck out of this nonsense. And Vader specifically says, Obi-Wan once thought as you did.
Yeah.
With what we have seen so far, Nick, there's no context for this line, right? Because it's not like on the fucking shores of Mustafar, Obi-Wan's like, oh shit, Anakin, that is you. You are coming back to the light. My bad for mutilating you. No, he left him to fucking die. He had no hope in redemption for Anakin Skywalker. So throughout these interactions, there's a good chance dialogue is going to take place between these two, where Obi-Wan may almost, we know it's not going to happen, but he may get Anakin starting to think like, you know what, this old fuck, I think he's right, but I have so many internal conflicts with my bad choices in life that I fuck him. He's still the asshole that fucked me up. I need to be angry. I'm going to keep focusing my anger on him. So if anything, Nick, I think we can confidently report that Kenobi and Vader are going to fight multiple times. It's going to mirror the Maul and Jedi interactions from the Phantom Menace, which I think is cool. And we're more than likely going to get dialogue from Kenobi where he believes deep down that his former friend can be brought back from the light. And this is that stuff's speculation. The multiple rematches is not. Speculation is their conversations while they're battling. And then ultimately, I do think Obi-Wan's probably going to get his ass kicked more than Mustafar, but still not enough where he's going to come out on top. And I'm hoping for maybe slashing the helmet a bit or exposing some of the human aspects of Vader.
Yeah. And then you would also have to assume that a lot of this is going to take place off of Tatooine. This was a conversation that that both of us have had multiple times. Yeah, whether he's going to leave or not. But I think this all but confirms it. Yeah,
so I'm the asshole on that front, Nick, because you've always been the one. Your brain is more open to this stuff than mine was, because I'm like, no. Again, being the traditionalist, you gotta adhere to all the New Hope lines, and he can't leave Tatooine. Who's gonna watch Luke? And unless Vader just keeps showing up on Tatooine and getting his ass kicked left and right and comes back for more, there's a good chance there is gonna be some planet hopping with Mr. Hello there after all. So kudos to Nick. Yeah, and definitely a fail on my part. All right, so really the next part of this exclusive is just Hayden himself and how much he is going to be involved in Kenobi. Our source has confirmed with us that Darth Vader, all right, Darth Vader, not Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader is a major thread in Kenobi. All right, so most shows are only going to have one or two major threads, maybe two. Yep. In this one, we can now argue we're going to have Kenobi and Vader. So the way it was sort of explained to the source, Nick, and this is me kind of adding some speculation to it, we may very well get almost dueling point of views from Kenobi and Vader throughout Kenobi. We may finally get some of that behind the mask insight into Vader's thought process in Kenobi, because it was made clear to me that Darth Vader isn't just a vehicle for action scenes. That I was specifically said, Vader's in it a lot and not for fighting, which, again, this is me connecting dots, means we may get position-based Darth Vader fucking scenes, and that gives me a boner. All right?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we've been asking for forever. I mean, specifically, we're like, all right, just give us a whole Darth Vader series where we're just like living in his head and seeing his rise during the periods of time after Episode 3. But it feels like that this is going to fill that kind of void. And the entire relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan towards the latter half of Anakin's life has always been based off of point of view, perspective, how you see things, and what lens you look at life through. And George made that very clear to us, not only in Episode 3, but also in Episode 6 at the end when he's sitting on the, on the log. It's like, oh, from a certain point of view, he did kill your father. So I mean, you have to remember that the relationship between these two characters has always been built off of their individual perspectives.
Yep.
So I think it's a genius move to essentially continue that through line by having them essentially play co-main characters, co-main threads in this show.
That's a good way to describe it, Nick. And I could be overselling it, but that's how it was explained to me. It was like, listen, Hayden is in a lot, but as Vader. So I mean, that was my next point, because I was like, all right, are we going to see the dude as General Skywalker or any of that stuff? And the source is like, we never even got that far in our conversation. Like I said, it was just kind of in passing. He kind of laid down the heavy stuff on me, and that's about it. But like I said at the start, Vader healing chamber, that's going down. You're going to see that scene. In fact, let's just say the source of a source may have been directly involved in the shoot. So yeah, you will see Hayden in the busted ass, pasty looking shell of the former Anakin self. And I think that would be fit. And it sounds like it's going to be more than just the back of his fucking head, like we got in Empire Strikes Back. Like it's a scene, you're seeing him, and the helmet's going to come down and seal. And last but not least on this report from your boys at the Star Wars Time Show, and I know it's kind of silly, but when this person tells me or explains that it's going to be epic shit, I take it to heart. Because these days, nothing really seems to move this person, especially from a Star Wars standpoint.
But yeah.
But really, just our source relayed to us that the Kenobi production pulled off some, in quotes, epic shit. All right? So if you think about that and then juxtapose it to the notion that Vader and Kenobi are going to tussle multiple times instead of just one, that Vader is a main thread. Like I said, my friends, I know it's called Kenobi, but I'm being led to believe now that it could very well be called Brothers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Former apprentices, something like that, because it does sound like Hayden had way more to do than we probably thought he would. And that he is mostly going to be the Dark Lord versus his former self, Anakin Skywalker. And it's going to be epic shit. And, I'm most excited for the epic shit because, like I said, when this person describes epic shit, then it's probably going to be ridiculous in nature from like an action standpoint. Yeah.
I mean, that's... From what it sounds like, this is going to give us everything that we wanted from this series, plus some. I mean, we never assumed that we were going to get a ton of Vader.
No,
we were
I
always
did
like, they'll use him sparingly. Yep. He'll be in there to really reinforce points. But it seems like the way that it sounds, he's going to be one of the bigs, and which means the series is going to take on a completely different life than what we expected. So
yeah. No, I was super excited. Like I said, it was a nice little update. I know it's still kind of like most people are like, whatever. It's not like, oh, he says this or this happens, but let's be real. I mean, outside of figuring out who some of these actors are playing, we know everything that ultimately happens between these two characters. So it can't get too wild. It can't get too wild, but just knowing that Vader sounds like he's going to be a major threat. I mean, those were the exact words. That gets me excited, Nick, because like you were kind of postulating here, we could almost get that fucking Vader centric series that we've been pining away for. Under the guise of Kenobi, it's you in series, but guess what? Vader's the number 2, if not 1.5.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a super exciting time. Hopefully all goes well and we get Kenobi in 2022. Hopefully if this Disney Plus day goes off without a hitch, we may even get a little bit of a sneak preview of it.
I would think so. I would hope we at least get like one of those sizzles that they did for Andor, because I mean, hell, Kenobi's fucking shot and probably lots of posts done, where before Andor hadn't even started shooting yet. It was all pre-production shit that they showed in that sizzle reel. So I think you're right, Nick. I do think we are going to get maybe not a traditional trailer for Kenobi, but on November 12th, outside the Boba Fett special, I do think we'll get a look at Book of Boba Fett in some capacity, maybe B-roll focused and cast and crew interviews. Kenobi sizzle reel, and maybe Andor a new sizzle reel, or that B-roll approach, if not a teaser. Because these days, the word is, at least from the leakers out there, believe them or don't believe them, I tend to believe this one. I do think they're going to save Kenobi for May to coincide with the May the 4th and all that stuff. And maybe Andor goes before that. Maybe Andor is like February, March after book ends, which we'll be talking about right now. So, Nick, we got the date. This was another one where it's literally the shit fucking happened while we were recording the show last week, and it burns my ass, because it's like, well, now I got to do a fucking post for it and then talk about it when everyone's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. But I guess we'll frame the discussion slightly differently, and we're talking about, we finally know Book of Boba Fett dropping 12/29 on Disney Plus. Got a new poster of the King right there. Looks fucking aces. And of course, the community that listens to the show came out in spades to recreate it in their various art forms. So kudos to all of you. But Nick, December fucking 29th for the Book of Boba Fett. I mean, we might as well just pretend it's a 2022 series at this point. It's going to get one episode in. I know you were kind of like me. You had more of the curmudgeon take on it. This is our question of the week, so we will get different takes on how people feel about the release date. Me personally, it's like, whatever. I'm off for 4 weeks around the holidays anyways. That's just academia for you. So I understand the argument. I don't know if you've seen it, Nick. We're like, yeah, sweet. Most families will be off, and it's after Christmas, right before New Year's. So we'll get to have a big kumbaya watch of it. I'm like, great. I think to me it was just, and I knew it was going to happen, but seeing it in writing and knowing that, yep, they're sticking to the fucking Wednesday debut date is just like, man, they did it. They really did it. They really let Loki fundamentally change how they roll shit out for whatever arbitrary metric that they think makes sense. That, oh yeah, a bunch of people watched it on a Wednesday. It's like, well, so what? Did they buy their subs to watch it on a fucking Wednesday, or did they just watch it on a Wednesday? Because I don't really see the need to move everything to Wednesday just because more people watch a debut on a Wednesday.
Yeah, like for me too, like it's nice for some people because, like you were saying, like, oh, it's, you're together with your family and stuff. Personally, I would have liked to see an earlier release date, but that's just me. Like when I'm with my family, we don't really, like, my mom and dad don't watch Star Wars stuff, and they don't really care about it. They also don't have a Disney Plus subscription, so I mean, I would have to sign into mine. But either way, like, I'm not going to watch it with my family. It's not
appointment television for Nick, is what he's saying. Like, this isn't.
No, it's not. It's not going to be like, oh, hey, family that I only get to see, in this instance, once a year now. Due to COVID, like, hey, sorry, I got to take like an hour-long break and watch this Star Wars show, and then I'll get back to you. It's a little bit different than
hey, Mom, Dad, I'll see you in an hour. See ya.
Yeah, it's like a little bit different than a movie when your movies would release around this time of the year, because then you could say like, hey, I'm going to get some of my friends together that I haven't seen since high school, and we hang out only when I'm in for Christmas. We're going to go see the movie together. It's going to be a good time. Like, this is a 45-minute long TV show that's debuting literally right when people are traveling home or are home for holiday season. Personally would have liked to see it release, maybe around the 15th of December, so we had a couple of episodes that we could get in before the new year. But essentially for me, I'm not going to watch this show until the new year, essentially, like until 2022, just because of how the release schedule is set
up.
I
mean, this is personal shit, but it's like I explained before. I'm now going to be adding 3 hours to like a pretty hardcore work day. I mean, Wednesdays I lecture sometimes for almost 5 hours, so I'm just not looking forward to those grinds because I have mental problems. I still feel compelled to make Star Wars content, even though, let's be real, the internet has spoken, the YouTubes have spoken, no one gives a fuck. I'm the only one that gives a fuck, and that's a me problem that I need to work on. But yeah, it's that I do not like the Wednesday debut day. It's stupid. Friday is Star Wars Day. That's what The Mandalorian ushered in. That's what it should have stayed as. And the late December, I mean, at this point, I believe it'll be a full fucking year since Mandalorian ended. That's a long stretch of time to make fanboys like myself wait to see a story get continued. And yes, Book of Boba will indeed continue the story in the timeline of The Mandalorian. So it is what it is, right? It's as more positive fans replied, Nick, it's Star Wars and it's on the schedule now. So we should probably just shut the fuck up and be happy. But you know me, I like to bitch, and I had to complain about something. So there you go.
At least it's happening, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I said,
at least it's happening.
The date is out there now. It's been put out into the world. It is now etched in stone. We just got to wait for it. So,
indeed,
I'm excited. All right. Hey, thank you, Jason. We need about 10,000 more of you, and we'll be good to go. So back to our old story. If anyone still cares to try and get our Kenobi leak up onto Reddit, that'd be great. I would assume that outlets like covering Mando started filming, that actually having some details about Kenobi's plot would fit that forum, but I guess I'm an idiot. Speaking of stories from that forum that I still think have less meat than what we just talked about, Nick put this one up here about Mena Massoud. But he, what was this, Nick? I guess I'll let you run with it. But he kind of did an interview essentially saying, yeah, I'm fucking pitching myself for the role of Ezra, right?
Yeah. So he had an interview with Ash Crossan at Screen Rant, and basically during the course of the interview, it came up like, oh, well, tell us about the famous Instagram post. The one where you essentially self-cast.
Your belly's hanging out and your nipples are hanging out.
Yeah, as Ezra Bridger, and basically, Mena said, like, well, why wouldn't I do it?
I love nowadays, that. He's like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah. It's like nowadays, shit like that happens.
Rosario.
Like you put yourself out there and you say you want the role, and even though initially it wasn't something that people were thinking about, if when they see it and they see the fan response, then hey, this kind of shit just pops up, and and then you get reached out to. And as we know with Mena, he already has a relationship with Disney through the live action Aladdin, which made over $1 billion worldwide. So that he's got a little bit of bankability behind him.
Yeah, but he actually has he been given a role since though? Because I believe it was either like Will Smith or someone had the stump for the guy. Like, listen, hire this man.
Yeah, I don't know if he's gotten a role since, but he was having trouble like landing stuff after that. It looks like now he's been in a few things since Aladdin, but nothing huge. I mean, if he were to get the role as Ezra, then this would definitely be the biggest thing that he's done since Aladdin. But essentially, I mean, like the interview was nothing. He was just like, yeah, I'm putting myself out there. Clear, like, I want to let people know that I want it. But, conversely, we've seen the other side of things where even recently, former Xena actress Lucy Lawless said, hey, I don't think that you people know that sometimes these fan campaigns can actually hurt.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you look at
roles.
Nick dipping into the well. This is something we almost ran with last week. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Lucy was talking again in an interview about, oh, have you seen the buzz around you potentially replacing Gina Carano? And during the course of that interview, she said, yeah, I've seen it and everything like that. But people don't realize that when you start these campaigns, if there were things in the works, this can actually hurt it. This can actually, be a detriment to you getting a role that would, you were talking about, or getting something else that could potentially be in the same universe. So we always look at these
Nick, I think she went as far as to say that she was in talks for a Star Wars role. And
yeah, that's what,
potentially all this fan stuff may have blown those talks up. It's like, so there is kind of a downside to the fan casting. I'm sure most celebs love it, especially those that may not be getting the work they want to get. But she did have a completely different take, so I'm glad you remembered that. But yeah, I mean, people are fan casting her for I even forgot the Cara Dune at this point in time. I know there's a lot of huge Cara Dune fanboys out there, but Gina or not, I never really found the character to be that engaging, but whatever, we won't go down that rabbit hole. So yeah, she was implying that she may have gotten taken off the board because of the fan assholes out there. Like, no, you beat her. Because at that point, then I guess the creatives are like, well, shit, if the fans already see you wearing that aqua jumpsuit, then we can't really cast you as a different character in their eyes, or they'll pitchfork us like we know Star Wars fans to do. So like Nick's saying, it sounds like this is still down. The fan cast and self-casting race is down to Mena Massoud and Rahul Cooley still for live action Ezra, and who knows, they'll watch Disney, they'll probably end up going with like a milquetoast white guy, like they'll bring in Cal Kestis to play Ezra Bridger or something fucking crazy. But I mean, if I had my pick, Nick, I would take either or. I think Mena probably represents Ezra better visually, but I feel like Rahul knows the character better. Okay, so
I'm not, because Mena didn't really go.
No, he dropped a good quote though that Ezra used, so I will give him that credit. But Rahul had a multi-tweet campaign, and he kind of knew his shit. So I would take either, but I do think visually Mena is probably the better fit for an Ezra in he'd probably be in his 20s if we're bringing him into the Mando timeline.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, real quick before we get to the fan segment, I'm sure a lot of you collectors saw this out here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, and who knows if he's even still available. But just in case you were not on the IG today, IO9 broke the news that the next figure from the Mandalorian wave is out. Well, it's been available for pre-order for a few hours now on Amazon, Nick, and it is the Mortar Trooper. The Black Series Mortar Trooper is out there. And like I said, Amazon exclusive, always hit or miss. I was able to secure one like 45 minutes after launch, so I don't know if they've actually fixed this one, and anyone can get in and pre-order as long as they do during the window. But if you are interested in the Black Series Mortar Trooper from The Mandalorian, he or she is an Amazon exclusive, so check it out. All right, man. It's time for that fan segment, and like we usually do, we're going to go ahead and start with the fan question of the week responses. So let me get some screens changed for you, Nick. And while I'm doing that, the way to get involved in the fan segment is it's a two-pronged approach these days, my friend. We give you multiple opportunities to play with the Star Wars Time Show. And the first comes in the form of the fan question of the week, which is going to get posted every Tuesday morning to the @StarWarsTimeShow Instagram account. I try to keep it themed to some of the topics we're talking about. So this week the question was, how do you feel about the Book of Boba Fett releasing on 12/29/2021? All right, so once it's prosed, you can answer via the stories or via comments. And then on the show, during the first part of the fan segment, Nick and I will read up to Well, if I'm doing it, sometimes 6. If Nick is doing it, 5 responses. So here we go. Responses to this week's question of the week. Up first, we have Lima for photos. I'll go ahead and take this one since I've been blabbing. At least they made the cutoff. I guess it's a good replacement, in quotes, for the usual holiday releases they did for the most recent Star Wars movies. That being said, any Star Wars content release, regardless of when they do it, is always welcome. True.
Yeah. True saying that they made the cutoff, because they did say this is a 2021 series.
Jeez, I mean,
for the first episode.
I guess they could have pushed it even closer if they tried. Well, yeah, they could have done it on Friday and literally the last day, but oh well. Yeah,
the absolute last day. But yes, very true. Ground Chuck, GRND, Chuck says, great way to get people to renew subscriptions in January.
There you go.
And he's right.
There's a curmudgeon take on it. We had to get one in there.
It's like, I mean, he's right. You know, you essentially, that's one thing that they should have thought of. Like, hey, we essentially lose a month of sub, because if we release this on the 15th and we do 15th and then 30th for our release dates, then you would say like, oh, maybe I'll sub in or December so I don't miss the first 2 episodes. Instead of just saying, well, I'll just sub in January, you lose that 2021 sub, and there you go. But yes, Ground Chuck saying he will be there for January. Mud Scuffer says, should have been before Christmas. Waiting all year sucks. I mean, he's right.
That's where I'm
waiting
at.
all year.
I'm a pouty little. You probably can't even say bitch boy anymore, but yeah, I'm a pouty little bitch boy. I'm like, man, because didn't Mando season 2 ended mid-December, right?
Yeah,
I think because I think it debuted like towards the end of October, ran all the way through November, and I believe the Luke moment happened the week before Christmas. So that's what I'm saying. It's like we will have gone a full year of no Mando inspired content, and that makes Matt sad. And Mud Scuffer.
It says the season premiered on the streaming service Disney Plus on October 30th. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you would do a 2-week cadence out from there, then yeah, it would take you to the middle of December. So there you go. Yeah, man, it's been a long time, but you know, I guess that's what
it'll be here before you know it.
Yeah. Next one, Boba Fett fan club. It's on schedule, so that's great.
There you go. If his fan club's happy, we're happy, right?
Yes. We just need it to release. We're just being little babies, right?
Of course.
2797 Studios says, I think the timing is perfect. People home on break. Xmas is over. People will be craving something new, and Hawkeye will most likely
taking
not
a shot at the
enough.
MCU. Look at that.
There we go. But yeah, I mean, I guess for some people that is a good time, because like if you're a Star Wars whole family, then being home will definitely help you. It'll definitely be a nice little bump, a nice little viewership experience. But for me, somebody who's not like a part of a Star Wars family, it basically is just like, okay, well, I'll watch it when I get back to Austin. So those are the fan takes this week for the question of how do you feel about Boba Fett releasing on 12/29/2021. Thank you all for your responses, and be sure to keep up with the question of the week every Tuesday before our show goes live.
You got it. So now, for those of you that may be new to this shit show called the Star Wars Time Show, the second way to get involved in the fan segment is through our iconic top 5 Star Wars fan artist features of the week. So the way to get involved here again is Instagram is always going to be the portal to the show. If you are a Star Wars artist of any kind, tattoo, real ass paint, toy photography, fecal photography, it doesn't matter. If it's Star Wars related, we want to see it. And the best way to do that is to tag at Star Wars Time Show in said content and use hashtag Star Wars Time Show. So every day I will go through both of those avenues. I'll look at the shots that were submitted and I will feature a handful of them. As I talked last week, sometimes my OCD brain will let me do odd numbers. Sometimes they'll let me do even numbers. It just really depends on the day. But once that's done, we'll go through a full week of features on Instagram, and then Nick sits on his throne on Monday, just like a king, like a Targaryen. Anyone else watch the trailer today for was the House of the Dragon or some shit? But anyways, he sits there like a Targaryen on the Iron Throne and knights 5 artists a week to be featured on the show, which brings us to this week's version, which dates 9/27 to 10/4. So Nick, good buddy, who is the first candidate for this week's top 5?
It's funny because I was going down and I was picking out some stuff for the top 5 this week, and the first one was actually ended up being the last one now because I accidentally picked 2 by Scale Galaxy. But the first artist up this week is at Broken Artist 98, and they have an awesome shot of Mr. Heavy Mando in the foreground with regular Mando, aka Din Djarin, in the background. It's a great exterior shot. I love the natural lighting here, and the figures are posed in a perfect way that makes it look and feel realistic, alive. Just great job all around with the posing and everything for this shot from Broken Artist 98.
Yeah, you hit it for me, Nick. It's the outdoor setting, getting that atmosphere there. And then, if you're on the stream, you can see it. If you're not, I'm trying to explain it. But on the left side of the image, you get that nice little light burst that some of the atmosphere kind of picks up and accentuates. But it is. It's the posing, it's almost like they're walking through a Mandalore's version of a rice paddy, right? Like they're the Mandalorian Vietnam, and they're staying frosty is probably the best way to put it. They look like they're ready to open fire at any moment, and you gotta love when you get that feeling of being alive from well-posed plastic figures. So good job there at Broken_Artist 98.
Beautiful work. Next up, this was a favorite of mine as well as a fan favorite. Over 1,000 likes on the IG.
At Rippic Tan, look at him.
Yeah, at Rippic Tan. He's a very common commenter on our question of the week.
Very engaged Star Wars Time Show fan. So we like
Absolutely.
Rippic_Tan.
And what we see from Rippic here is a very poignant shot of what seems to be dead Admiral Thrawn laying amongst a host of weaponry surrounding him, and it's iconic weaponry from the Star Wars universe. I mean, it's surrounded by lightsabers, of which you could probably name all of them, specialized pistols from some of the biggest names in the game, helmets and everything. For some reason, even though this shot is relatively it's very complex, but it's also very poignant, and it seems like,
Nick,
hey,
do
man,
you know what this is in? Do you know what
happened.
this is in reference to?
I do not.
There's a scene in Suicide Squad, I believe a deleted scene. Actually, let's just go out to Rippic's account because I believe they included it. But it's a scene of the Joker laying on the floor just like that with a bunch of knives and shit pointed at him as he's kind of going manic in his room. So I'm on Rippic Tan's page right now. Yeah, there it is, Nick.
I'm seeing it.
So yeah, it's actually an homage to a DC moment, but with Star Wars. And I love that Nick and I both kind of gravitated to it with different purpose, right? I was like, oh shit, I've kind of seen this before. What is it based on? And luckily Rippic put it in there to remind me, where Nick took it as like, this is just fucking a cool idea. So I love that we kind of came to it with different mindsets, yet we both deemed it to be a kick-ass shot.
Yeah, I mean, you could think about it as like, I know that there are some weapons in here that, Thrawn may not have directly affected, for lack of a better term, because you have Rey's pistol and you have Kylo's lightsaber. But the way that I was looking at it was like, look at, during his time as the Grand Admiral of the Imperial Army, look at all the lives that he's affected in various different ways.
People after him, whatever the message is behind. I don't know why. I'm assuming in Suicide Squad, the idea was like, yeah, this clown's fucking nuts. Like this is what he does in his free time. He lays around his floor with all of his arsenal. But I think Rippick repurposed it perfectly for Star Wars with Thrawn, who very, very may well be the puppet master for the Mandalorian timeline. Okay, I mean, yes, very technically we know Palpatine's still doing something over on Exegol and some aborted clone fetus. But it does sound like, at least in the way season 2 went and some of the mentions we got, that Thrawn could be a huge player in the Remnant Empire. So just really enjoyed Rippick's creativity here, if anything else.
Yes, absolutely love it. So at Rippick_tan on the Instagram. I think that actually might be a double underscore because that's like super long underscore.
That's tricky. Yeah. Okay. Be careful, friends. Just make sure to find them. It's honestly, Nick, it's one account that I have seen grow week to week. Like you can tell Rippick, probably got bit by the bug a year or two ago and has just honed and has gotten better and better and better at setups, dios, lighting, atmosphere. So like I said, definitely an account to follow.
Definitely so. Beautiful job. Next up is at Failed Imagineers.
Customs.
First off, I just love that. I love that that handle, the Failed Imagineers handle. For those of you who follow Disney and know what an Imagineer is,
well, it's kind of. I mean, Nick, I think you and I could be failed Imagineers because I know I'd love to be working in entertainment, specifically with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. And you just said, it's great talking to people like Alex, but it also reminds you that at one point in your life you wanted to kind of be him and do that type of shit. So yeah, we are definitely textbook failed Imagineers over here at the Star Wars Time Show.
100%. But this shot here, so I think like you said, Matt, this is one of Failed Imagineers custom figures, and what we see is a repainted / rebuilt up Boba Fett.
It's crazy.
He just looks so badass. He's got like a trench coat, almost like a Punisher style trench coat.
Yeah, like the sleeves are cut out. It's bitching.
And the paint job is completely new. It's like a navy with an orange trim. Just the scene itself. I mean, I know this is showing off a custom figure, but the scene itself is pretty awesome. You see an explosion happening in the background. He's like rocketing off with his rocket boots, and the key here is the figure itself. It stands out, it pops, and that's what really caught my eye. I was like, holy shit, what is this Boba Fett? I know I've seen 1,000 of them released by every toy outlet ever, but I haven't seen this one before. Oh yeah, and it makes sense because it is a custom figure.
It's like and shit, I can't really even use this because I call him Neo Fett. But let me rephrase it. It's literally like Neo from the Matrix dressed up like Boba Fett, right? Because he's got that black duster. It's got all sorts of fucking weapons tucked into it, strapped to it, hanging down from him. You can see there's like a submachine gun hanging down towards the bottom right. He's got grenades on his pauldron. He's got detonators on his chest armor. This Mandalorian, if it's Boba Fett or not, it looks like one Mando to rule them all, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he's the badass that is just hanging out in the galaxy that doesn't need to. And he doesn't
give two fucks about Death Watch's pledge either, because he is definitely not honoring traditional Mandalorian armor with that rad ass coat that he's wearing.
Yeah, and those additional arm pieces as well are probably not standard Mando protocol.
Yeah. So he's like, fuck you guys, you paint chip eaters. I'm hanging out with Bo-Katan. Yeah.
There you go. So I guess if you like this figure, you check out Failed Imagineers page. And then he said he's opening up a limited number of commission spots for the month of October. So
look at that. Interested right there.
Reach out to Failed Imagineers on the IG. There you go. Next up in the top 5 is at _shadow_layer. And this is a beautiful shot here of the heiress the future queen of the Mandalorian people. This is Bo-Katan herself. And what really stood out to me about this is just so much vibrant color in here, but it doesn't feel you don't feel overwhelmed. You see, Bo-Katan right there in center frame, but then the environment and the diagram that's used in this shot by shadow layer just accentuates everything that's happening. Just beautiful posing, the fire and the smoke coming from the background, and then just the entire dio is so expertly used.
The dio to me, Nick, is, I believe it's all practical. I really do. I think a lot of this is practical. I could be completely wrong. And if I am, that just goes to show how excellent this shot or this scene was set up. But it really kind of pays off on what Alex said earlier when we were interviewing him, and really the look of Star Wars versus other sci-fi. I guess Firefly is very similar to Star Wars in that it's a future that looks broken down. It looks lived in. Yeah. And that's what Shadow Layer accomplished here with this diorama, be it digital or practical. It has that Star Wars lived in feel, right? It's not all shiny. It's not all sanitized looking. It doesn't look like the Tantive 4 hallway. It's just a very well composed shot, and like Nick said, it's that strong orange backlight that then gets kind of accentuated and picked up through the, I'm guessing, practical fog here, just completes the shot. So excellent work here from @the_shadow_layer.
Beautiful, beautiful work. And the final entry in the top 5, like I said, @Scale Galaxy almost made it twice.
Was busy.
Scale Galaxy was busy. I mean, I saw, because obviously Star Wars Visions is fresh in our mind. I go onto the feed, I see a bunch of Vision stuff, so I'm just clicking them open, and they're all from Scale Galaxy. I mean, like, okay, well, I can only pick one.
Scale Galaxy literally watched Visions and then went to work on making custom Star Wars Visions figures.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely insane. And the one that we see is from what seems to be near the consensus favorite. This is from the duel. Yep. And what we see is the invading Sith Lord to the village and her incredible, I don't know how else to describe
umbrella.
it, the lightsaber umbrella. Yeah. Fully customized here. It seems by Scale Galaxy. And the figure itself is almost picture perfect to what we see in the show. I mean, the details in the mask, details in the garb. I mean,
well, perfect. You know what, Nick? I believe we found Scale around, a little, once The Mandalorian started last year, he was one of the first to just instantly whip up a Boba Fett, right? Like Nomad Fett, the splotchy paint Fett, repainted Fett.
The Omegas as well. I believe he had a couple of custom Omegas that were coming out around.
I don't know. I don't know if he's got like a mold injector in his house or something. He just can fucking make figure molds or what. But Scale Galaxy, in terms of the end product and the turnaround time, is one of the quickest and most efficient Star Wars customizers out there. Because like Nick said, he picked the female Sith. But if you'll allow me, Nick, I'm going to pull up Scale's page. I mean, he made the Ronin. Looks fantastic. Yep. He made Toby. Looks fantastic.
He was.
And looks like we got one today. And now looks like he's making some of the fucking remnant Empire forces from the duel. And they're perfect. Like, it's like he somehow got the concept art from Star Wars Visions and is able to plug these into, I don't know if he sculpts them, if he's got a printer that does this shit, but I mean, my goodness, amazing. Just amazing work from Scale Galaxy. And like I said, I'm impressed by the craftsmanship, but I may be even more impressed by the turnaround time.
Yeah. It's truly incredible how fast he can get high quality pieces like this out and photographed and up for everybody to see. So beautiful work @Scale Galaxy on Instagram. Just beautiful, beautiful stuff with these custom Star Wars Visions.
Yeah, I think Sergio needs to change his profile from just photographer to photographer
Customize that.
at all or something like that, because
Yeah,
there's more than just photography happening on At Scale Galaxy. So another great follow if you're not already.
And just to close out the top 5, our Star Wars Time Show giveaway is still going on. We have reached the minimum amount of posts required for our giveaway. I believe we're at 30 now, so we've doubled it. But hey, keep adding stuff. If you haven't gotten your submission in yet, we have at least one more week left for submissions to be open. So get them in. Use the hashtag SWTS giveaway. Tag 2 friends in your post, and there you go. So just a reminder that the giveaway is happening. It's live now. Put your posts up. Hashtag SWTS giveaway. Tag 2 of your friends. And there you go.
Yeah, hey, I finally found, just as you finished talking, I finally scrolled to it on our profile. But yeah, it's still out there if you need the details and you're dumb like me and your gray matter deletes everything Nick just said within the next 10 seconds. But we still do have the post out there, and we'd love for those of you stragglers to get involved. The main post is just a good way to let other people know that this is going on. But like Nick said, to be entered... to win, the prize package, again, is an official Star Wars Time Show Flex Fit hat, TVC The Armor, TVC The Mandalorian, TVC The Child, a Lucasfilm 50th Anniversary Black Series Jaxxon, and a GorillaPod 325 from Joby. So to officially enter, as Nick said, when you make a post dedicated to Star Wars. Again, it doesn't have to be toy photography. It doesn't have to be traditional art. Anything Star Wars related. It could be you sitting there, singing Star Wars. I'm talking about Star Wars, doing the Bill Murray. It doesn't matter. Anything. It's like, why do you love what is Star Wars to you? So once you post it, just make sure, like Nick said, to use hashtag SWTS giveaway and then tag 2 other friends. That'll get you entered. And next week, live on the show during the fan segment, we will be making the selection. Okay, we haven't quite figured out how that's going to be. I don't know if we whittle it down to like a top 3 and we kind of do or maybe a top 5 and do like an AGT, the next one to make the cut, and then I'll do 6 Manscaped commercials in between each cut down. We'll tell you after the break. That type of bullshit. But all right, so there you go. Thank you, everybody. Is it time to end it, Nick? We good? We good to put it to bed? End it.
Take us to the dance.
All right, I will be happy to do so. So as we always do at the end of the Star Wars Time Show, and if you want to, you can shimmy and shake along with me. But I'm headed over to StarWarsTime.net, which is where we like to refer all of our existing fans and hopefully new listeners after hearing an episode of the Star Wars Time Show. Over on StarWarsTime.net, you can get all the content we're going to talk about on the show, or just some of the content we make and no one checks out, but that's okay. I still like doing it because I have a mental sickness. In addition to finding our content over on StarWarsTime.net, more importantly, this is the easiest way to get looped into all of our platforms. Be it the traditional podcast, you can find jump-off links for all the good ones, Apple, Google, Spotify, Android, Pandora, TuneIn, Stitcher, Deezer, nuts, you name it, we've got it over on StarWarsTime.net. Now, if you're sitting there going, I don't really like just listening to these idiots. I like seeing how dumb they look too. Well, don't worry, we have you covered as well. On StarWarsTime.net, is it beat into your brains yet? Say it with me, people. StarWarsTime.net. We also have our YouTube jump off point. And in fact, if you just click the subscribe button like I'm doing right now on the live stream, it will automatically get you subbed up. You don't even have to make another click because we love you and we believe in the 3-click rule of the website or of the web in general. No more than 3 clicks. Trust me, I'm a professor. All right, people. And why do we want to do this? Well, you long-timers, you fandos know, there's always time for Star Wars time. We just need to convince more people that that is true. And I believe it in full. Because if Nick and I can kind of drag this fucking show through the summer and no real Star Wars content, there truly is always time for Star Wars time. So we do appreciate your loyalties, and hopefully some of you new subscribers will stick around and keep spreading the word. All right? Because if you do, and you do listen to the Star Wars Time Show, you will learn and then you will know that the Force will be with you. Always.